In these notes, we're going to talk about the properties of different chords. This is on your purple circle that you can cut out and get ready to copy this down. So in the first little area up here is if we have congruent triangle or congruent circles, or is in the same circle, if we have two different scenarios. So if we start knowing that these orange chords right here are congruent, then we know that the arcs that they open up to are congruent. Or if we start knowing that the arcs are congruent, then we know that the chords are going to be congruent. So it goes both ways. In this situation right here, again, is if we have the same circle or if we have congruent circles, then if we know that two different chords are congruent, so if you see both of those are 8, then we know that, let me show you, so we know that KJ will be congruent to JL. Or if it's the exact opposite, if we know that these two pieces right here are congruent, then we know that IH is going to be congruent to FG. So just the distance is going to be the same. In this corner down here is if we have if one chord is a perpendicular bisector to another chord, so notice it's perpendicular and it bisects that other chord, then we know that PN, so that original chord, has to be the diameter. So this is kind of the exact opposite. If we know that this is the diameter, then we know that, and it's perpendicular to that other chord, then we know that it bisects the arc. So that means that ST is going to be congruent to TU. And we know that WS is going to be congruent to UW. So with this first example, we can see in these two circles that the chord FG is congruent to chord JK, and we know they are congruent circles since the radius for both circles are the same. And we know, let's see, that the measure of arc JK is 80 degrees, then we need to know what the arc is of FG. So since they are congruent congruent circles, then we know that this would equal 80 degrees as well. So again, because we know that the two circles are congruent to each other because of the same radius, that and our arcs are congruent, then because the two chords are congruent. So if the two chords are congruent in congruent circles, then we know that the arcs are going to be congruent. So the arc FG equals 80 degrees. For bisecting arcs, if two adjacent arcs are congruent, and the two adjacent arcs in our picture over here is our X, Y, and YZ. So those two arcs are congruent and they're adjacent because they share one of the sides. Then the central angle that forms them, so that would be this whole angle right here, that's the central angle, that is bisecting the two arcs. So CY bisects the arc XYZ. For number 2, we can see that this diameter the diameter is perpendicular to a chord. So this means that the chord is being bisected. So this means that CF is congruent to FA, since those are the pieces that it's bisecting, so we know these are going to be congruent. So that means that CF is also 7, but if we want to find the length of AC, AC is double that, so we would have 14. In number 3, we can see that we have two chords that are congruent, which then tells us that they are equidistant from the center of the circle. Since they are equal to the center of the circle right here, that means that we have 2x is equal to 5x minus 9, and then we can solve for the x. So divide it up, subtract your 5x to the other side. So we get a negative 3x equals negative 9. We can get rid of our negative 3 then by dividing by it. So we get x equals a positive 3. We are looking for CU, which is right here, so my 2x. So I need to plug the 3 in for the x. So CU is going to equal 6. So on this one is similar to one we did before. So because our BD is the diameter and it is perpendicular to this chord, that means the chord is congruent, but it also means that the arc pieces are congruent. So we know that the arc of CD is congruent to the arc of DE. And because of that, then we can set those pieces equal to each other. So 9x is equal to 80 minus x. Divide up your two sides. That means we can add our 1x to both sides. So we get 10x equals 80. And then if we divide by 10, sorry, that was my phone. We get 80 divided by 10, so we get an 8. So now we just have to plug it back into the different pieces. So 9 times 8 gives us a 72 degrees for that one piece. And then 80 minus the 8, which is our x, gives us 72 degrees as well. So both of those measures over here is 72 and 72, and that just proves that they are equal to each other when I plug it back in, so I know I solved it correctly. So CD is 72 degrees, DE is also 72 degrees. And then if I want from C to E, that's the whole piece. So I need to take 72 times 2, and I get 144 degrees.